Today I'm going to show you how to make a chipboard book album similar to this one. This one is completed and it's all from chipboard, paper, glue, cloth, ribbons, and different kinds of embellishments. Give you a quick peek inside. So I have included photos and all kinds of embellishments, pocket, which I'm doing a class on that as well, pocket type of insert for pictures. So let's get started. All right, so how do you bind a book like this? Well, the first thing you need to do is to cut 8x6 rectangles of good chipboard or cardboard, a nice stiff, firm type of cardboard. You can cut it on your rotary cutter. You can use scissors. You can use an X-Acto knife, but be very careful with that. And of course, use a board that is able to absorb any shock from the knife and doesn't cut through to your table. So the first thing I've done with all of these is pages. I have my prepared pages here. The first thing I've done is to paint the edges of them white. And I have painted them in such a way that the edges are covered as well. So the first thing you want to do, and these happen to be white, but you could use any color. The entire book is going to be your own creation. So if you use black or blue or pink or red, any color at all. This is acrylic paint that I'm using. And I'm making sure that I am painting on the edges because this part will show when the book is closed. So you want to be sure that you cover the edges. And doing this, preparing your boards this way, just makes embellishing that much easier when you add paper, photos, and that kind of thing to your pages. You don't have to cover so much. And if you wanted to create a kind of rough, grungy look, you could leave a little bit of the cardboard showing. But the idea is to really hide the cardboard. Okay, so I'll let that dry, and you're doing both sides. Now the next thing is to take your boards, once they're prepared, also make sure that they're all exactly the same size, that you don't have one that might be higher than the other, because that would create a real problem when you went to put your book together, especially when you add the binding, which I'll show you in a little while. So the first thing to do is to measure an inch from the edge of each board and draw a line. So I've measured 1 inch here, made marks, and then drawn a line. And this is where you're going to be gluing your binding strips to these edges. Now the binding strips I've chosen red. You're going to measure 3 inches across. It's good cardstock that's, has a good consistency all the way through and is nice and firm, good quality cardstock. And so I prepared binding strips for each of my pages. And I've scored them at the 1.5 inch mark. So right down the middle, you're going to score them and then crease them, fold them. You can use your scoring tool to give a nice fine edge. Like that. And before we go on to that part of the demonstration, I'd like to just talk about some of the things that you're going to collect beforehand, before you even get started. Make sure that you have plenty of wipes nearby, so that if you get paint or glue on yourself, you can easily get rid of that. And you're going to go through all of your store. What I loved about doing this project is I was able to go through all of my items and supplies in my craft room, all of my scrapbooking type things, as I'm primarily a scrapbooker, but I'm enjoying this paper crafting tremendously. So I've collected flowers, various ribbons, paper ribbon, clips, twine, netting, lots of different kinds of ribbons. I may or may not use these, but I have them ready to go when the moment moves me. I've also put together a lot of flowers, stickers, chipboards, chipboard pieces, lots of little bows, chipboard pieces that can be applied or painted. And of course I have a good tape runner for the photos, and I'm going to show you my glue jar. So I have a jar that I've just decorated, but I'm using clear glue, and it's very good for paper and all kinds of materials. It's a little bit messy, so as I say, be careful, keep your wipes nearby. But I'm inserting it each time after I use the glue, I leave it open and I insert it in the jar, and then when I want to go to use it, it's a simple thing. The glue is already where I want it to be. So you're going to apply glue within the 1-inch mark of your board, your first board. You could also use an adhesive roller. A large adhesive roller works well, as well as the small ones. And then taking my binding strip, I'm going to line up the first binding strip right up to the line, very carefully. So it's important that you measure everything carefully so that you don't have overlap. If you did, you could trim it off, but it's not that easy. So if you cut it right the first time and make sure that your boards are cut to the measurements. So each strip, whatever size book you're doing, this happens to be 8x6, but whatever size book you're doing, you're going to make sure that your binding strip is the same height as your page. So you'll notice that this is 1.5 inch that I've just glued. So I do have an overlap there. I want that because that will allow for flexibility in the book. Here's a sample I can show you. So here's a little small mini book that we're making. Once the pages have been built up and the bindings have been applied, this overlap allows for more flexibility and give within the book, because with a chipboard book, it's common and fun to add a lot of embellishments, flowers, chipboard pieces, ribbons, bows, all kinds of things that are going to make your book quite deep, like the one I showed you. So you'll notice on this book, the pages are rather thick, but because I have an overlap in my binding, no problem. All right, so the next page you're going to apply to this page by first put glue on your 1-inch line. And then standing up the first page, you're going to stand up the second page and then match it up, making sure that the bottom is even and the sides are even, that they're matched up from the bottom. So you're gluing from the bottom up. And again, you have the 1/2 inch overlap, which you want. Same thing for the next page. Apply a strip. Just take a neat one. Meet it up to the line. Press down. And I have to say the clear glue works really well for this paper. And there you have it. So you'll be building up your book and adding to it by taking a page and gluing it to the binding, and then a binding, and then a page, and a binding, and a page. And before you know it, you'll have a nice book to work with, to embellish. So you're ready to embellish now. Hope you have all your materials together, and see you next time.